How's it going, guys? And welcome to the showdown between Bretonnia, led by the Fey Enchantress, and the Tomb Kings, who are going to be led by Setcher the Imperishable atop his mighty Pimp Chariot. So let's jump right into this match, guys, and have some fun. So in this game, I wanted to bring a very well-rounded Bretonnian army. As such, in the middle here, you can see I have a couple groups of men-at-arms with polearms, which I feel are very good in this matchup. Anti-large, armor-piercing, and by Bretonnian standards, they do have pretty good leadership. So if you can honestly stack a couple of these guys on top of a Grail Reliquae and, have them fighting constructs, they can do a pretty good job. In the front line, I do have a very heavy core of foot squires, which I do like because of their 70 armor. So one of the big weaknesses of Tomb King's infantry in general is that they have very bad armor-piercing values. So let's go ahead and actually take a look up here. So I think these are Nehekar warriors, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, they are. So 33 weapon strength here, and only 7 of that is armor-piercing damage. So the 70 armor, although, it's not like Chaos Warriors or things like that, but it's still going to be very helpful in this frontline engagement. Although I'm not sure how that would go in a head-to-head fight. I haven't really done the testing. So these guys have 90 unit models compared to the 90 of Foot Squire. So could be a bit of a wash. But I do have the Grail Reliquae in the front. It's going to be in between these two groups here. So if you look at the Aura of Effect, it should be hitting both of these Foot Squires. You can see 90 leadership here and 90 here. So it'll definitely fight to the bitter end. Got the Fey Enchantress as well. I think she's probably by far the most competitive pick. Granted, King Lewin and some of those other Flying Lords can be decent options, but I feel like it's a little bit risky against the Tomb Kings because of Ushapti Great Bows. So Great Bows can just pepper your Flying Lord, prior to the main fight in the beginning of the game, and it's just, you can take so much damage. And on top of that, if they bring Arc in the Black with like Spirit Leech, it can be really tough to keep those Flying Lords alive. As such, I do like the Fey Enchantress. She's very good for like a grindy style of play, which I think is a little bit more works better with the build I'm bringing this game. Because this game, the build isn't going to win the battle quickly. It's going to be very grindy using polearms and peasant archers. It's not like a very heavy cav build from Bretonnia, which is there to instill a bunch of shock damage. So the Fey Enchantress has Earthblood and Regrowth, and the Chalice of Potions. And now in the back, I do have 4 groups of Peasant Bowmen. So this is something I've been experimenting with, and I actually had it done against me like a couple weeks ago on Ladder, and I was like, man, those Peasant Bowmen actually did a lot of work against my constructs. So I do have 4 groups here, and they're dirt cheap, and they even do have the expendable tooltip. 160 range isn't bad, and they do actually, I think, have 3 or 4 armor-piercing damage. Let's actually go ahead and check. So 20 missile damage with 3 of that being armor-piercing. So not the best, but, it's kind of a volume of fire thing. So I do have 4 groups, and that's like a very small investment. I think they're 400 a pop, so hopefully they can kind of whittle down those Ushapti Great Bows, or even take out these Nehekar warriors who only have 45 armor. So we do have those. In the back, 1 more group of polearms, 2 groups of men-at-arms here in the back just in case. So if he has like Carrion Land or something, these guys can, do a decent job at clearing out Carrion and just like backline chaff stuff. So. And also, if my frontline buckles, you can then send them up as kind of a reserve unit. So for my cav, I do think, like, even though the peasant hordes can work, I still think it's pretty much a must to have a couple groups of Grail Knights in this matchup. They're a very, very solid pick. They have really good armor-piercing value, really good armor, I just keep repeating myself. Really good anti-large bonus of 12, and on top of that, they got a charge bonus of 78, and they're just a solid pick. They have a pretty decent physical resist, and they'll give you pretty much complete dominance over the flanks. And if you can get them on top of Ushapti Great Bows or wrapping up a Tomb Scorpion or something like that, they'll really pay for themselves. And they did get a buff to their armor-piercing damage in the, I think it was the Rise of the Tomb Kings patch. That's pretty much it for my army. For my opponent, he has 2 groups of the Nehekar Horsemen here, which are the kind of mid-tier. You can see they have a 28 melee attack, 35 melee defense, and 38 weapon strength. So not a bad pick. I mean, if they're able to cycle charge, what I would probably do if I were to bring these, I personally probably wouldn't choose them in this matchup. But if you do decide to bring them and want to incorporate them into your gameplay, I wouldn't use them to kind of contest the flanks because you're simply not going to be able to win against Bretonnian Cav. You probably want to use them in your main core, have them cycle charge foot squires, and just kind of be that annoying presence in the front line. And once your opponent then commits to the front line, you can grab them and go up around the flank and try and get on those archers. So he does have 2 groups of those, 3 Tomb Scorpions. So this is relatively common, seeing a lot of Tomb Scorpions. These guys are just such trolls in the night. Their attack animations makes it so hard to lock them down, so you really need to allocate your Grail Knights and other resources to taking care of them. And you can see my opponent is going to be running a Necrotect over there, so he has Restore and all of those nice buffs. For his main army, it looks like Kepragard here in the middle, the Regiment of Renown of Tomb Guard, 2 groups of the Nehekar Warriors, some spears, the mighty Pimp Chariot on the... He actually has the Chariot of the Gods, which I haven't seen in a long time, but it can be pretty good against infantry-based strategies, so considering I went more heavily focused on infantry, it might potentially be really hard to drag down. He has the Ushapti Great Bow here and 1 on the far side. So that's pretty much it. Without further ado, guys, let's get the show on the road. So he's going to immediately be shooting in his Ushapti Great Bow on my cav, which is tough. I can lose some models pretty quickly here, but it looks like my guys do have the moves like Jagger. They're able to get some dodges going on, but I don't mind committing to this engagement here against these Tomb Scorpions, and I was a little bit surprised he was so aggressive with these guys, but I mean, they can do a ton of work, and you can see those Tomb Scorpions, even though they say anti-infantry, they're pretty much anti whatever they're attacking. Like, I fight for just a second here, and I thought it was a huge mistake by my opponent. He's like, oh, he's coming right in my hand, fighting my anti-large cav. But no, like, they just melted my Grail Knights right here. Just took them down to 31 models, doing massive HP damage. So I do retaliate with a regrowth to kind of mitigate some of that, and I also have the Fey Enchantress and my other group of Grail Knights coming in, and I am going to be detaching some of these Men-at-Arms with Polearms. So he's trying to get a bit of a, I think, a Death Star going on. So getting the Tomb Scorpions with the Necrotech and then just shooting into my blob with the Ushapti Great Bows. So definitely a little bit of a spooky strategy going on there. In the meantime, my main forces are going to be advancing, so I had to send all of my cav over here. So, you know, the point I was just making about the Nehekar Horsemen, you know, having a cycle charge in the front. Now that he's drawn all my forces over here, he can definitely do some work with the Nehekar Horsemen if he decides to. So in the front, you can see the Nehekar infantry and the Tomb Guard here are going to be charging in, and my Peasant Bowmen are going to be shooting at the Ushapti Great Bows. And, you know, it's damage that does that up. And you can see some decent HP damage coming down from the Foot Squires of Bretonnia. They're going to be charging in for the Lady and getting that nice monster mash. But they actually take a lot of damage on impact against those Nehekar warriors. And they have a charge bonus of 15 compared to my 22. I feel like the Foot Squires would win this 1-1 simply because of their anti-infantry bonus, but their stats are a little bit lower, 32-21 compared to 25-20, so the melee attack quite a bit higher on these guys, so we'll see how that goes. The Peasant Bowmen just continuing to shoot in the back. I'm going to really be going after these Ushapti Great Bows and some of these other troops, but the front line is okay, and the Grail Reliquary here will pretty much ensure my guys fight to the bitter end. So my opponent's trying to encircle me with the Nehekar Horsemen, so I form a bit of a box here, so I get the Men-at-Arms and the Halberds right here, and I do advance on my extra troops, so I had some Men-at-Arms here, and he did have the Ushapti Great Bows positioned out on the flank, so this is a great situation. Just chasing a very expensive unit with some chaff and forcing him to run is basically just taking away their combat effectiveness. Over here in the blob, it's like, even despite me investing all those resources, it's still a very, like, wild fight. I do have these Grail Knights and these Halberds kind of fighting the Tomb Scorpions, but the other two are almost pretty much done with my Grail Knights here. The Necrotech has taken a bit of damage. I was going after him with the Fey Enchantress and just making sure to focus him with these Knights, but you can see the Chariot God himself is going to be coming in here and just monster mashing these Grail Knights right here. So I was surprised though, like even after that really like solid initial engagement from me, I wasn't able to kill any of the Tomb Scorpions right out of the gates. So I'm also using my Peasant Bowmen right here just to shoot into these Ushapti Great Bows, which, you know, it's not doing the most damage, but they're still at about 75-80% of their ammunition, and over the course of a long fight, they probably will grind these guys down, and if I can kill like 1 or 2 models on the Ushapti Great Bows, that's going to really kind of mitigate, you know, their firepower, because, you know, they are one of those units. Unlike, for example, like if you have Shaggots with you know, Dragon Ogre Shaggots, as you lose models, that unit's combat effectiveness is going to be lowered, whereas like a single Dragon Ogre and Shaggot, the big powerful entity, is pretty much going to have the same fighting power over the course of the whole game. So we're just shooting in there, kind of wasting those guys. The Foot Squire is performing very well against the Kepra Guard. I thought they would just get massacred, but they're at 35, Kepra Guard at 48. But look at the HP. I mean, these guys have 101 kills, so they obviously did pretty well, but pretty proud of these guys. They put up a good fight for Bretonnia. So just making sure to be really conservative with my back line, protecting my resources, and as I need to, I'm sending my auxiliary forces forward to kind of re-engage and just keep my front line from being compromised. But really, this is kind of the epicenter of the battle over here. You can see he does charge in with these Nehekar Horsemen, and I did have my Halberds standing right on top of my Peasant Bowmen, but he just had, you know, a lot of troops coming in. There's also Fear and Terror nearby from the Tomb Scorpions, so he is able to get those guys down. And you can also see that my Men-at-Arms with Polearms here do terror out to those Tomb Scorpions. So despite that engagement with these Grail Knights and these other troops here, I still haven't been able to kill them yet, but, you know, I do have a lot of troops kind of waiting in the wings here. And with this strategy, going very heavy with like Men-at-Arms with Polearms and Foot Squires and Peasant Archers, I'm really playing that atrocious playstyle, so I'm not looking to burst these guys down, like I said before. It's more so going to be something where I just kind of win over the long game, if at all. So over here you can see I'm still kind of shooting into these Ushapti Great Bows, but a little mistake I made is like I had my trees turned off, and I still do right now, so I didn't really acknowledge that the trees here were going to be a line of sight blocker, so I think a lot of my effectiveness is, as well as his Ushapti, like we're both just shooting through the trees here. But, you know, I think we've been missing out on a lot of value there. So over here I did send some Foot Squires to fight these Ushapti Great Bows. They're kind of getting picked apart. I do have a group of Men-at-Arms who just rallied, so they'll be re-engaging here. And now, unfortunately, the Ushapti summons are here. So he summons some Ushapti in my back line, and they're just going to be monster mashing these peasants here. This is just a slaughter, George. So the peasants are just like, God help us, and they're running for the hills, which is not fun, but yeah, they paid their dues. And they put in pressure. I've been able to get some great missile value on Nehekar warriors and also shoot some of these Ushapti Great Bows in the back. But it looks like the Tomb Scorpions and other guys are just going to be hunting me now. And if anything, the Peasant Bowmen are kind of like a distraction Carnifex, wherein like he's going after them with all of his resources, and I'm just kind of chasing with Polearms and other troops. And the Tomb Scorpions are finally starting to get worn down. I had to be a little bit careful with the Fey Enchantress, because the Tomb Scorpions, if I sit in there too long, what he was doing is he was grabbing all 3 of his Tomb Scorpions and just focusing the Fey Enchantress, and with their mass and their attack animations, they were able to get to her like every time. So this is going to be kind of the last bastion of Bretonnia. You can see all the Men-at-Arms with Polearms just kind of standing in here and fighting, and this is actually, despite how it looks with, you know, Bretonnians flying everywhere, this is a really good situation for me. I mean, these guys You can see, let's see what the leadership is on these men-at-arms. So they're at 29 leadership because of the Grail Reliquary, so I have a lot of relatively tattered troops, but many of them are specialists against the troops that are still fighting in here. Balance of power in my opponent's favor a little bit, but, you know, I reminded myself to stay calm. He had some summoned Ushabti, so just keep fighting in the pits. The Fey Enchantress, let's just use her with these men-at-arms here to kind of, you know, do some damage to the Ushabti Great Bows. And these polearms should easily be able to kind of cleave these guys asunder. So you can see the statues are falling in the Fey Enchantress, doing some for Dragon Ball Z magic here. So over here, my opponent is able to use those Ushabti Great Bows to kind of rout off some of my men-at-arms and my foot squires who I was chasing him with. I do have some peasant bowmen rallying here in the distance, but there's not too many great targets for them anyways. So balance of power is still relatively even, if a little bit in my opponent's favor, but the halberds are starting to wear down these guys. There's only one Tomb Scorpion left, so 2 of the Tomb Scorpions have fallen. You can see their inanimate corpses here among the peasants of Bretonnia, very proud people. And the Ushabti are starting to go down to those halberds, so the battle's looking okay, going a little bit in my favor, I would say. And you can see the Chariot of the Gods here in the middle is just surrounded by halberds and spears, and the Fey Enchantress should be able to actually maybe duel Cetra on the Chariot, because like you guys know, chariots aren't really meant for dueling type situations, more meant for running through infantry and things like that. So he was probably sitting it next to the Tomb Scorpions to give them Thy Will Be Done for the melee attack and melee defense and all that stuff. But really, the Fey Enchantress will be pretty good at kind of chasing down the Chariot and applying some pressure. He does have some Ushabti Great Bow fire in the distance, so you can see he has 9 models here. I still have my peasants kind of chasing them down, so these Bretonians are very persistent. So hopefully they'll be able to shut down those Ushabti Great Bows and keep them from firing into this blob. So basically we kind of cleaned up everything there. You can see he does have the Ushabti Great Bows, but the Fey Enchantress is on the hunt, so she's going to just charge them down. And they can't turn around, and I thought for a second to try something funny, so I used the Chalice of Potions, and thankfully it did hit one of my Bretonians there, but he got up, he's fine. It's not like that scene in Star Wars when like the Ewoks go down. Oh man, that scene gets me every time. But you can see the Chariot God is coming over here. He's going to be running through the peasants, which is not good. So he gets in there and definitely cleaves a couple of those guys. You can see with his big scythe just whacking them as he runs through. But the Fey Enchantress should be nearby, and yeah, she's right on a 6 and is able to get a pretty good engagement. She's going to be supported by some halberds. She is very fast on her unicorn. She has 95 movement speed. In the meantime, the rest of my forces are just going to be chasing down the Ushabti Great Bows here, and it's probably just a matter of time until my opponent gets hit with army losses. If Cetra does take a little bit more damage, you can see he's getting drained. There's peasants with halberds chasing him. And I think that's going to be pretty much all she wrote for the Tomb Kings, and you can see he does get hit with army losses. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that build. I actually played a game a couple days ago on ladder against a gentleman named Marcrox, I think was his name, and I think he's like a top 50 player on ladder. Seems like a nice dude as well. And he actually used a build pretty similar to this, and my Tomb King build was a little different. I used like an Iro Titan and a very traditional construct build, and so many Tomb Kings players will overload their forces to get ready for Cav. So they're like, okay, I'm going to see like 5 Grail Knights and just all this stuff. So let's get a Necro Sphinx and just go very construct heavy and all these different things like that. So when you go very wide like this with a bunch of halberds, like those halberds can really grind down the constructs, especially if you're able to keep alive that Grail Reliquary, which I think was just essential to the outcome of this game. So yeah, it was definitely a fun build. As far as my opponent's army composition, the triple Tomb Scorpion can be pretty nasty. I think that he wanted to like force that engagement, try and goon me out on the side there, and then shoot me with the Ushabti Great Bows. But I think it would have been a little bit more effective had they fought shoulder to shoulder with the Nehekar warriors and the Kepler Guard and things like that. But it was definitely pretty wild there, taking out these Tomb Scorpions. And the Ushabti Great Bow is always a pretty good choice. They were putting constant pressure on me, just shooting my Cav down. You can see my Grail Knights took a pounding. I mean, these guys were fighting constructs the whole time, but 0 and 8 kills. I mean, that's pretty rough for sure. But yeah, it was definitely some fun stuff. So very well played to my opponent, Normac. Look forward to running into you again on ladder. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this Bretonnia showdown. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.